Until up to 584 to 580 BCE, the Olympic Games were organized by the Oxylides, an aristocratic family from the city of Elis. Over time, however, the family seemingly died out, and the responsibility of organizing the games passed on to other members of the Elean aristocracy, who were chosen randomly by lot. The first organizers of the games were originally called Agonalthetae, literally those who held the games, but their name was eventually changed to Hellenodicae. Hello, judges. This looks like the Hippodrome. Alcibiades at Olympia. I don't see him either. Athletes were primarily from the upper class. They had to be rich to afford the expenses of training and their participation in the games. Alcibiades, an aristocrat from an Eneman family, was one of these very wealthy athletes. His preference was for horse races. These events were reserved for the wealthiest participants. A good illustration of his financial power was during the Olympic Games of 416 BCE. He participated with a whopping 7 chariots in the quadriga race and won first, second, and fourth place. He was the first to ever enroll this many chariots in one race, and in the context of the Peloponnesian War, this was a demonstration that Athens was still powerful. Alcibiades increased that impression with a magnificent feast, and even used official Athenian gold and silver plates for the occasion.
Official Athenian gold and silver plates.
That does not look like you in the game, though.
Yeah.
Your hair is shorter.
Got a beard.
Yeah, he's got a beard, too.
Got no pupils.
The Olympic heritage. The modern Olympics were inspired by the ancient games of Olympia. A French nobleman, Baron Pierre de Coubertin, was convinced of the parallel importance of the development of mind and body, and he saw this ideal in ancient Greek culture. He had the idea to revive the games and started to promote this notion. At this time, excavations had begun at the original site of Olympia. The ancient site was rediscovered in 1766 by Richard Chandler, an English antiquarian, but the first excavation was carried out in 1829. The excavation reports inspired de Coubertin, who became obsessed with the athletic ideal of Olympia, which he thought would inspire competitiveness and team spirit among nations. The first modern games were held in 1896 in Athens. The sanctuary is very ancient. Its use goes back to the 3rd millennium BCE. At first, it was only a sacred forest. From about 1000 BCE onward, a cult of Zeus developed on the site of Olympia. The traditional date of the first Olympic festival is 776, which is also the date of the first recorded winner of the games, Coroebus of Elis, who won the Stadion race. The Olympic Games have their origins in ritual funeral games. Funeral games were held to honor the deceased, and might have celebrated civic heroes or private individuals. In the Iliad, Homer related that Achilles held games for his friend Patroclus, who died in the Trojan War. It is the most ancient mention of this ritual, but they are attested to well into the Hellenistic period. Brasidas, the Spartan general, died in the Battle of Amphipolis during the Peloponnesian War. He was honored as the new founder of the city, and funeral games were organized and became an annual event.
got a unicorn now.
Unicorn. The Bouleuterion of Olympia was one of the first buildings constructed in the site. The Council of Olympia met in the Bouleuterion to discuss matters regarding the sanctuary. They appointed priests, arbitrated conflicts between athletes and Hellenodice judges, and decided which victors to erect statues for, as well as where to put them. The Bouleuterion also housed archives of records from previous Olympiads, in addition to the statue of Zeus Horkios, in front of which athletes and trainers swore their Olympic oath. This fabulous animal of legend is a loyal companion. In the main game, your sibling becomes Deimos, a weapon raised by the cult of Cosmos. Oh no, it's whatever character I have selected, like. Like, see, Cassandra has a pirate, Alexios has a mercenary. Cassandra is Greek hero. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. I'm a pretty Spartan. Hey, Barnabas. The Olympic Games.
Hail, friend, and welcome to Olympia, home of the Olympic Games. My name is Barnabas, and I'm a ship captain. Don't be fooled by my eye. Though I've seen my share of combat, I mostly stick to trading these days. Well, trading and introducing visitors like you to wonderful sights like this. I've often dreamed of competing in the games. If my sight was better, my legs and arms were stronger, and my coin purse was fatter. But that is not what the gods want, so I continue making the best of the path they've laid out for me. We're standing in the main section of Olympia, where the Olympic Games themselves took place. Over the course of the festival, athletes competed against each other for prestige and glory to honor themselves and their cities. Enjoy your visit, friend. I'll check in when you're done to make sure you've been paying attention.
The first day of the Olympic Festival began with a swearing-in ceremony for the participating athletes, trainers, and judges. The ceremony took place in front of the altar of Zeus Horkios, or Zeus of the Oath. Athletes would swear that they would follow the Olympic rules, while judges promised to be fair and unbiased. Then the competitions began, starting with a contest between heralds and trumpeters over who would have the privilege of announcing the games. The first day's athletic competitions consisted of wrestling, running, and boxing events for the youngest athletes, aged 12 to 18.
You can be 12 in the Olympics?
The Junior Olympics was the real deal?
Dang.
I mean, like, we have Junior Olympics now, but I also have to love
The second day began with a
first
grand procession into the Hippodrome to to celebrate the start of the popular equestrian events. The most anticipated and spectacular of these was the quadriga, a 4-horse chariot race. Horse racing events were unique in that the winner was not the most skilled jockey, but the owner of the fastest horse or chariot. The Spartan princess Caniska once took advantage of this loophole to skirt the rule that women weren't allowed to compete and earned 2 Olympic victories in the process. The rule also allowed for occasionally strange results, like in 416 BCE, when the statesman Alcibiades entered 7 chariots into a race and won 1st, 2nd, and 4th place. After the equestrian competitions, the 40,000 spectators migrated to the stadium to watch the pentathlon events. When the day's events were over, funeral rites were performed for the hero Pelops, the mythical founder of the Olympic Games. The night ended with a celebratory feast and a great parade in honor of the day's victors.
Yeah. How many people can say they won at least 2 Olympic medals in one event?
Well, I mean,
Well, in the same
yeah.
race, I mean.
Victory at the Olympic Games was one of the highest honors a mortal could achieve, and there were several ways to immortalize that honor. Some athletes had statues erected of themselves, while others commissioned poets to write them victory odes. Oral tradition was very important to the Greeks. These odes, called eponychia, were often composed by the finest poets in the land, such as Pindar, Simonides, and Bacchylides. They were usually played at banquets and celebrations attended by the triumphant athlete or upon his departure from Olympia. The pentathlon took place at the stadium on the 2nd day. As its name implies, it was made up of 5 events: discus throwing, javelin throwing, jumping, racing, and wrestling. There are several differences between the ancient version of events and their contemporary counterparts. For example, ancient long jumpers held weights in their hands to give them momentum to launch, since there was no run-up before the jump. Similarly, if an athlete won the first 3 events, they were immediately declared the winner, instead of being judged by their overall performance in all 5 events. Running events work the same as they do today, with the notable exception of all the athletes being nude. As for wrestling, competitors were not divided by weight class as they are today, but instead by age. The winner was the first to throw his opponent to the ground 3 times. Day 3 started with the most important event of the festival. A procession of Hellanodikai, ambassadors, competitors, and animals made their way to the great altar in front of the Temple of Zeus. The animals were then offered as the official sacrifice of the festival. The afternoon of Day 3 was dedicated to foot racing events. Running was the oldest event of the Games, and in fact was the only event at the first Olympics. The main race was called the Stadion, which was a sprint of around 180 meters. The winner was granted the honor of lending his name to the 4-year period between the Games. This period was known as the Olympiad. The 4 years that followed the first Games in 776 BCE were known as the Olympiad of Coroebus of Elis, the first Olympic champion. Once all the competitions were over, a public banquet was held in the Prytaneon to celebrate the day's victors.
Πάμε, τούτους τους όνους μαστιγού, ακαταπαύστος μαστιγού.
Day 4 was mainly for combat events. Wrestling matches were held in the morning, followed by boxing and pankration. Pankration was a no-holds-barred mix between wrestling and boxing. Almost all moves were permitted, except for biting, poking the eyes or mouth, and striking the genitals. The event was very popular, and it was seen as the ultimate expression of strength and technique. Later on in the afternoon, there was a unique racing event called the Hoplitodromos, or Race in Armor. In this event, competitors wore a helmet and held a shield to simulate running in the battlefield.
Ουέ, μη πείσεις με εκτός ομιλήν.
The Hellenodikai, or judges of the Greeks, were both the game's adjudicators and their organizers. They hailed from Elis, the city in charge of the sanctuary of Olympia, and new judges were elected each Olympiad. They had several responsibilities. Before the games started, they decided which athletes would be allowed to compete and supervise their training. They also drew lots to make the competition brackets. During the games themselves, they picked the winners and kept an eye out for foul play. For the latter, they were assisted by stick and whip-wielding umpires who stood near the athletes and punished them if they were caught cheating. Victory in Olympia was one of the most prestigious honors in all of Greece. Not only would victors be showered in glory in their home city, but their names would be known across Greece. The temptation to glory led some athletes to break their oath to Zeus and cheat. This could be dangerous, as there were many possible punishments should cheaters be caught. They could be disqualified and fined, or if they were caught cheating during a match, they would be beaten by nearby umpires. The most powerful deterrent of cheating, however, was shame. At the foot of Mount Kronios, and on the way to the stadium, were a group of bronze statues called Zanes, the plural of Zeus. These statues were inscribed with the names of the cheating athletes, how they cheated, and the fine that was imposed. The Zanes, which were funded by cheaters' fines, were strategically placed to be highly visible. Individuals or even entire cities could be found guilty of cheating.
Yeah.
Throw a couple zines up there.
Exactly.
The Prytaneion was the administrative center of the cult of Olympia and the Olympic Games. The building housed the sanctuary's priests, as well as the game's officials. It was also used to stage the grand banquet held on the evening of the third day to honor victors. It also had a sacred function. Its central chamber was the location of the Fire of Hestia, a sacred flame that burned day and night. This fire was used to light the other altars around the sanctuary. This practice may have partially inspired the modern tradition of carrying the Olympic torch.
Προαιρούνται του ύψους της διανοίας ένεκεν. Τραγωδία εκλαμβάνει τας ιστορίας αυτών και χρείται ταύτας τραγωδοποιού ένεκα.
Hello again! I hope you enjoyed your visit. With their spectacular events and lavish banquets, the Olympic Games were a feast for the senses. I am certain even Zeus himself was entertained by the festivities. Now, is there anything else you'd like to do? Wonderful! Let the mental Olympics begin. Let's start with an easy one. Which notable woman won an event in the Games? Correct! She won 2 equestrian events thanks to her savvy horse purchases. This next question is slightly more challenging. Which of the following is not a famous Greek poet?
Καταδικαστέ ημίν, έχει και αξία το τραγωδοποιό.
You are right! Brasidas was a renowned Spartan general, and he didn't have time for rhymes and pretty words. Time for the final question. How many events were in the pentathlon?
Οι χαρακτήρες εν τες τραγωδίες, η τραγωδία διαφθείρει τους νέους και ούτε καταβάλει. Τραγωδία ανέρεσης εστιμιασμός με καταδικαστέ ημίν, έχει και αξία.
Yes! The Greek word for pende means 5, and the pentathlon had 5 events. Well done, my friend! You truly possess a sharp mind. Thirsty for more, eh? I don't blame you. Follow me.
Got the biathlon, we've got the triathlon, we got the decathlon, they had the pentathlon. I used to think it was a dodecathlon, but now I'm thinking I made that up in my mind.
Maybe. Where are we going to go next?
Athens. Going to Athens.
Ah, Greek hockey. Ellis is done.
Έναν εξάδελφο και έχω. Πώς τις ώρες
Yeah, we're in Athens.
Λέγει ούτως ότι σε τρία δυνάμει αρπάζουσε στη βοηθεία σκευοφύλακος εξάστρος. Τι σκευοφύλακος?
Let's see.
There's a lot going on here, buddy.
Yeah,
Oofda.
there's a lot. Let's go get these. Those we can
Gonna meet up
save.
with Thespis? Wait, you don't want to talk to your best friend SPC?
I will, but first I'm going to get some of these discovery sites. Music was everywhere in ancient Greece, and we wanted to reflect this in the game. Musicians played in the sanctuaries, the Olympics, the villages, and the cities. Music had many uses, including singing and playing during ceremonies, creating rhythm during combat training, and for entertainment. Working closely with our musicians in the UK, Canada, and Greece, we created original songs that reflected important moments in the story, instrumental music to provide entertainment throughout the world, and ancient Greek sailor songs for the boat.
Brothers born to be Spartans, they'll ride through the fire they face. They carry the weight of Leonidas, the bravest they'll fight to the grave. The bravest they'll fight to the grave.
You know, the oldest song written down was written on an ancient Greek tombstone.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
Turns out it was a drinking song.
A drinking song found on a tombstone.
Yeah.
Funny.
Greece is weird.
An altar consecrated to Dionysus is believed to have stood in the center of the theater's orchestra. This central altar would have been the focal point of the choral dance. However, some archaeologists have suggested the altar was actually on the side of the orchestra, and there has also been debate about whether or not it was a permanent fixture in the theater. The altar was used in religious ceremonies before and after performances. Dionysus was worshipped with food offerings and the sacrificing of animals like cattle, sheep, pigs, and goats. He was also offered wine libations, befitting his title as the god of wine. In addition to its sacred uses, the altar could also function as a stage property in various plays, like Agamemnon's tomb in Cheophori and the Omphalos of Delphi in the Eumenides. Oh, it's up. Deus ex machina.
The god from
The Geranos crane, or mechane, machine, was located on the right end of the stage and could suspend and carry actors through the air. This was especially useful for portraying characters like gods or heroes. On top of the skane, there was also a roof called the Theologian, where the gods speak. That was reserved for the appearance of divine beings. Greek dramatists would often employ gods to resolve difficult and complicated conflicts. The god would first be lifted through the air by the Geranos, then land on the Theologian before resolving the drama with a neat solution. This process inspired the expression Deus ex machina, or Theos apo mechanes in Greek. The expressing refers to the sudden resolution of a seemingly unresolvable situation.
Deus ex machina. What a beard on that guy.
During the classical period, Dionysus was the
freaking gremlin. How you doing, gremlin?
During the classical period, Dionysus was the most important Athenian deity after Athena herself. He was worshipped both inside and outside the city, and the festival dedicated to him, the Great Dionysia, integrated not only citizens but also metics and foreigners from the colonies. Dionysus was portrayed as a double-faced god, both human and animal, male and effeminate, young and old. He dealt with murders, madness, and violence, but was also the nicest of the gods when it came to mortals. The Bacchae, a tragedy by Euripides, emphasizes Dionysus' duality. In the play, the god's worshippers are sweet and joyful, but a king named Pentheus is also murdered in his name. You're a very complex guy.
It happens, okay?
The skane was a backstage area where costumes and accessories were stored. It was also where actors went for costume and mask changes. The word skane means tent or hut, suggesting that older versions of the structure were made of perishable material and were only meant to be temporary. Over time, however, the skane underwent many changes. The first permanent stage house was built in Athens in 330 BCE. It had projecting structures called paraskenia at each end, and a fourth stage called a proskenion was added sometime later. Together with the proskenion came elevated logion, and an upper facade known as the episkenion, which had larger openings called theromata. Together, all these structures provided actors with several different ways of entering and exiting the stage. Cool. Oh, there's nothing in Boeotia, really. Megaris just says 2. Go do Megaris.